The yellow sticky note clung to my empty safe like a taunt. Marcus's familiar scrawl sprawled across it in blue ink. Borrowed your portfolio for family business expenses. Your little investments can help the family for once. We'll explain later. I stared at the note for a full minute, my hands remarkably steady as I photographed it with my phone. 27 years of watching my older brother coast through life on charm and family favoritism had taught me to document everything. What Marcus didn't know, what none of my family knew, was that those little investments represented 8 years of carefully curated securities worth $8.2 million. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Marcus says you're being dramatic about some stocks. Family comes first, Emma. Don't embarrass us at Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner. Where Marcus would spin this into another story about his struggling tech startup, how he was taking risks to build the family legacy, how his little sister's hobby trading should support the greater good. The same dinner where Dad would nod along, where Mom would praise Marcus's entrepreneurial spirit, where I'd sit quietly in my usual corner chair and let them assume I was still the aimless recent graduate who moved back home to figure things out. They had no idea I'd been working remotely as a senior enforcement attorney for the Securities and Exchange Commission for the past 3 years. They had no idea that my little investments had grown from my first bonus into a portfolio that caught the attention of institutional investors. They had no idea that Marcus had just committed multiple federal crimes. My laptop chimed with an urgent email. Subject: Unauthorized portfolio access. Immediate response required. Charles Whitman, my private wealth manager at Goldman Sachs, had sent a detailed breakdown. Marcus had liquidated $2.3 million in securities that morning, triggering automatic fraud alerts across 3 different systems. The trades were flagged for regulatory review within hours. I opened my secure SEC database and began typing Marcus's full name into the enforcement tracking system. His financial history populated across my screen. A pattern of failed ventures, mounting debts, and increasingly desperate attempts to maintain his lifestyle. The tech startup he'd been bragging about for 2 years? Dissolved 6 months ago. His revolutionary app? Never existed beyond a basic website template. But the family didn't know any of this. They saw Marcus's expensive clothes, his leased BMW, his confident presentations at family gatherings. They saw his college degree from the state school where Dad had been a donor, his internships secured through Dad's golf buddies, his job titles at companies that folded within a year of hiring him. Meanwhile, they saw me as the quiet one. The late bloomer. The daughter who'd finally graduated law school at 25, who worked from home in her pajamas, who never talked about her job because it was probably boring government work. They saw someone who should be grateful that her successful older brother was willing to include her in his grand business plans. I pulled up the security footage from my bedroom camera, a precaution I'd installed after noticing small items going missing over the past year. There was Marcus, 3 hours ago, using the spare key Mom had given him for emergencies. He moved through my room with practiced efficiency, not even bothering to look for the actual safe combination. He'd simply pried it open with a crowbar, stuffed the physical securities certificates into a briefcase, and left that infuriating note. My secure work phone rang. Director Sarah Chen's name appeared on the screen. Emma, I just saw the fraud alerts on your personal portfolio. Are you all right? I'm fine, Director. It's a family matter that's become a federal matter. Securities theft of this magnitude. Emma, you know we have to investigate. I know. And I know who did it. There was a pause. Are you saying you want to file a formal complaint? I looked at the note again, at Marcus's assumption that I'd simply accept this theft as family obligation. I thought about Sunday dinner, about years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated like the family's charity case. I thought about Marcus's smug confidence that he could take whatever he wanted because Emma would never fight back. Yes, Director. I want to file a formal complaint. Wire fraud, securities theft, identity theft for accessing my accounts. The full investigation. Emma, you understand what this means. Federal charges, potential decades in prison, asset forfeiture. I understand completely. Sunday dinner arrived with its usual theatrical production. Mom had spent hours preparing Marcus's favorite meal, prime rib, roasted vegetables, homemade rolls. The good china gleamed under the dining room chandelier, and Dad had opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for special occasions. Marcus strutted in 20 minutes late, his designer jacket casually draped over his shoulders, car keys jingling from his manicured fingers. Sorry, family. Big investor call ran long. You know how it is when you're building an empire. Tell us everything. Mom beamed, rushing to fix his plate. Emma mentioned something about investments? I kept my expression neutral, cutting my meat into precise pieces. Marcus borrowed some of my securities. For business expenses. Borrowed. Dad raised an eyebrow. Marcus, I thought your startup was fully funded. Marcus waved dismissively. It is. But when opportunity knocks, you answer. Emma's little stock portfolio was just sitting there earning pennies. Now it's part of something bigger. He reached over and patted my shoulder condescendingly. Don't worry, sis. When the company goes public, you'll get your money back tenfold. Aunt Carol, Dad's sister, leaned forward with interest. How much are we talking about? Nothing major, Marcus said quickly. Emma's always been conservative with money. Probably had a few thousand in some basic index funds. Not exactly high growth potential. I nodded thoughtfully. Conservative. Yes, that's one way to describe my investment strategy. See. Marcus grinned. Emma gets it. Family business requires family resources. We all benefit when one of us succeeds. Uncle Jim, Carol's husband, shifted uncomfortably. Marcus, did you get Emma's permission before accessing her accounts? Permission. Marcus laughed. Jim, we're family. Emma lives in Dad's house rent-free, eats Mom's cooking, uses our health insurance. Her contributing to a real business venture is the least she can do. The familiar shame burned in my chest. Not shame about the accusations, but shame that I'd allowed this narrative to persist for so long. Yes, I lived at home. Because I traveled constantly for SEC investigations and maintaining a separate residence would have been wasteful. Yes, I worked remotely. Because federal enforcement work required security protocols that traditional offices couldn't accommodate. Yes, I kept my finances private. Because financial transparency could compromise ongoing securities investigations. But explaining any of this would have meant revealing my real job, my real income, my real life. And I'd convinced myself that maintaining my cover was more important than correcting their assumptions. Marcus, Mom said gently, maybe you should have discussed this with Emma first. Discussed what? Emma doesn't understand high-level finance. She thinks buying Apple stock makes her Warren Buffett. He reached for the wine bottle. Trust me, I'm doing her a favor. Her money was dying a slow death in those boring mutual funds. My phone buzzed silently against my leg. A text from Director Chin. Team assembled. Federal warrants signed. Are you still at the family gathering? I typed back, yes. Suspect is present and providing excellent evidence of intent. Marcus, I said carefully, can you walk me through exactly how you plan to repay the money? Repay. He looked genuinely confused. Emma, when the business takes off, your initial investment will be worth millions. You won't want it repaid. You'll want to invest more. But what if the business doesn't take off? Marcus's expression hardened slightly. It will. I've got connections you can't imagine, investors lining up, technology that will revolutionize 3 different industries. Dad nodded approvingly. That's the kind of confidence that builds empires. Emma, you should be proud to be part of Marcus's vision. What exactly is this technology? I asked. Marcus's pause lasted just a beat too long. Proprietary algorithms. Can't discuss details until the patents are finalized. Uncle Jim looked skeptical. Patents for what specifically? Data optimization. Machine learning interfaces. Blockchain integration. The buzzwords rolled off Marcus's tongue with practiced ease. The kind of cutting-edge development that requires significant capital investment. How much capital? Carol asked. Several million to start. Emma's contribution gets us to the first milestone. I felt my phone buzz again. Another message from Director Chin. Local field office is 10 minutes out. Do you want to step outside? Actually, I said, standing up, I think we should all stay right here. I'm expecting some visitors. The doorbell rang at exactly 7:47 p.m. I'll get it, I said, walking calmly toward the front entrance. Through the window, I could see 3 black SUVs parked in our driveway, their occupants emerging with briefcases and badges. I opened the door to Agent Patricia Rodriguez, whom I'd worked with on the Meridian Capital case last year. Good evening, Agent Rodriguez. Good evening, Attorney Walsh. We have the warrants. The dining room had gone silent behind me. I could hear chair legs scraping against hardwood as my family members stood up. Emma. Dad's voice carried a note of confusion. Who is it? I led the federal agents into the dining room, where 6 faces stared at us with growing alarm. Marcus had gone pale, his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. Family, I said calmly, I'd like you to meet Special Agent Patricia Rodriguez and her team from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Agent Rodriguez, this is my family. And that's Marcus Walsh, the subject of our federal investigation. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then chaos erupted. Federal investigation? Mom gasped. Emma, what's going on? Dad demanded. Marcus stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. This is insane. Emma, what did you do? Agent Rodriguez stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of 15 years in federal law enforcement. Mr. Marcus Walsh, you're under arrest for wire fraud, securities theft, and violation of federal investment laws. You have the right to remain silent. Securities theft? Aunt Carol's voice pitched higher. Emma, how much money are we talking about? I met her eyes steadily. $8.2 million. The room erupted again. Uncle Jim's wine glass shattered against the floor. Mom grabbed the back of a chair for support. Dad's face went from confused to thunderstruck. That's impossible, Marcus sputtered, even as Agent Rodriguez continued reading his rights. Emma doesn't have that kind of money. She's unemployed. Actually, Agent Rodriguez said, pausing in her recitation, Attorney Walsh has been a senior enforcement attorney with the SEC for 3 years. She specializes in securities fraud prosecution and has personally secured convictions totaling over $2 billion in federal cases. The room went quiet except for the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. Emma, Dad whispered, is this true? I nodded toward Agent Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez can verify my employment status. Attorney Walsh is one of our most respected investigators, Rodriguez confirmed. She's received commendations from the director himself for her work on major financial crimes cases. Mom sank into her chair. $8 million? Emma, how did you? I've been investing my salary and bonuses for 8 years, I said simply, along with consulting fees from financial institutions that hire me to review their compliance protocols. Marcus was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're lying. This is some kind of setup. Emma works from home in her pajamas. I work from home because I handle classified federal investigations, I explained patiently. I wear casual clothes because I spend most of my time reviewing financial documents and coordinating with field teams. Agent Rodriguez held up her tablet. Mr. Walsh, we have security footage of you breaking into your sister's safe, financial records showing you liquidated over $2 million in securities this morning, and documentation of your attempts to hide the transactions across multiple shell accounts. Shell accounts. Dad looked between Marcus and me. Marcus, what shell accounts? Mr. Walsh established 14 different business entities over the past 6 months, Agent Rodriguez continued, all designed to obscure the movement of stolen funds. This represents a sophisticated financial crimes operation. Aunt Carol was staring at me with new recognition. Emma, when you said you work in government, I prosecute people who steal other people's money, I said quietly. It's what I've been doing for 3 years. Marcus finally found his voice. This is family business. You can't arrest family for family business. Agent Rodriguez looked at him with professional disdain. Federal law doesn't include a family exemption clause, Mr. Walsh. The federal trial lasted 6 weeks. Marcus was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. The judge ordered full restitution plus penalties, which meant the liquidation of every asset Marcus had accumulated through his various schemes over the past 5 years. My parents attended the sentencing hearing. They sat in the back row watching their son be led away in shackles, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd attempted to steal from their daughter. The local newspaper ran a front-page story. Local woman helps convict brother in $8 million securities theft. The article detailed my actual career, my successful prosecution record, and the sophisticated investment portfolio I'd built through years of careful financial planning. 6 months after the trial, I bought a house across town. My parents visit occasionally, but the dynamic has fundamentally shifted. They no longer treat me as the family's charity case, and I no longer tolerate being dismissed or overlooked. Mom called last week to tell me that Marcus had written from federal prison, asking if I might consider hiring a lawyer to appeal his sentence. I told her that would constitute a conflict of interest with my federal law enforcement position. I didn't mention that I'd been promoted to Senior Director of Securities Enforcement, or that my new role came with a substantial salary increase that pushed my portfolio value past $10 million. Some lessons I've learned are best delivered through consequences rather than explanations. The family business, as Marcus had called it, was finally operating according to proper regulations.